You're not defined by your grades, you're not defined by failure, you're not defined by how much money you make. In my second midterm, I got 30 out of 100, but the moment you stop trying is the moment when the implications of those grades become final.
Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Joy. I work at Bloomberg as an engineer. I am an Indonesian girl working and living in New York City, and today I want to talk about something that I think is one of my most interesting life stories, which is how I went from failing my first computer science class to becoming an engineer at Bloomberg here in New York City. Some disclaimers: I am not the best engineer. I still have a lot of room to grow technically. Just the fact that I was able to grow from a place where I literally could not understand for loops for the sake of my life to working as an engineer, I think it's a huge leap. And I know that a lot of people, especially students, struggle with failure and tend to feel like it's final. So I hope my story inspires you. Failure is not final. I also think a lot of times we tend to assume that if you're smart, you'll never fail, or if you work hard, you'll never fail. But that's not true. People who are smart, people who work hard might still fail. And what matters more than failing itself is how you react and the things you do after you fail. And also, just want to say, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I am far from the smartest person in the room, but if I can do it, so can you. So here's my story. I grew up in Jakarta, Indonesia. I really wanted to go to college in America because when I was 14, I watched Devil's Wears Prada. And what I understood then was that, oh my god, it's so cool to work and live in New York City, work in journalism. So I decided when I was 14 that I wanted to study in the US. But my high school wasn't a very competitive school. It wasn't a really academic driven school. Typically 4 out of 200 students got sent directly to a 4-year college in America. Because I wanted to be part of that statistics, I worked really hard. I took academic validation to the T. That was my life. I would breathe and study and just throw myself at extracurriculars. I was very type A, that I just associated my entire self-worth to my grades and my results. It paid off because I got into UCLA, but my second year I took an introduction to programming course, which, mind you, wasn't even by the computer science department. It was programming and computing, which I believe is for students who are new to programming. So it wasn't even an intro to CS course by the CS department. So it was supposed to be easier. Because I was a math major and I was always pretty good at math, I thought that I would be good at programming because I was good at math. But turns out they're both analytical, quant heavy, but both math and computer science require different ways of thinking. A lot of it is similar, but a lot of it is different as well. And at that time, I was not used to that differences in terms of way of thinking. I could not understand classes, the concept of classes, which is the most basic CS course. In my second midterm, I believe I got 30 out of 100, which put me I don't even know what grade that was because it was not curved. I was on track to getting a C, and at that time it was a nightmare because I was getting A's at this point in college, and then I was gonna get my first C, and I could feel it. And after that second midterm, I cried. I literally was crying as I took the midterm. But then I wasn't someone who gave up easily. So I went to office hours every single day, even though I didn't understand the concept and basically made no progress all quarter long. At the end of the quarter, I was supposed to get a C+. But then the professor, from having seen me in her office every single freaking day, somehow took mercy on me, bumped my grade up to a B-, which still wasn't great. So I swore to myself that I would never write a line of code ever again. Hate this, not for me. And I just was really sad when I went home that winter break. I remember just lying on my bed and I was like, have I peaked in life? Why can't I get an A? I saw results as my self-worth, And then a year later, I met this professor, a statistics professor, and he randomly sent this video on the first day of class, which was a TED talk about the growth mindset and how he wants us to employ the growth mindset when we're taking his class. And at that time I was like, ooh, what is the growth mindset? Watch the video. Essentially, for those of you who don't know, a fixed mindset is someone who sees talent and skills as fixed. They see it as assigned at birth, assigned a certain amount of talent, and then people with a fixed mindset tend to assume when they are not good at something, it's because they're just bad at it and they can't improve, versus people with a growth mindset believe that skills is something you can exercise and improve on over time. Yeah, I was definitely someone with a fixed mindset. If I couldn't do something, it was because I was not naturally smart enough and that I couldn't improve. I think having gotten a really bad GPA in that quarter I took my first programming course, I kind of let go a little bit in terms of like I was tired of tying my self-worth to like my grades. So when I was taking his class, I was like, why don't I just focus on learning instead of the result? And it actually made the process a lot more enjoyable. It made me not hate exams as much, and it made me more open to exploring things that I might have been bad at. And then in my third year of college, I became interested in the world of data journalism. And haha, surprise, data journalism requires you to write code. So I sort of begrudgingly like enrolled in an introduction to Python course, except this was like specifically for the stats department because at this time I was a stats major. I switched majors a lot. And I don't know, just being less anxious and not gunning for that A and focusing on the fact that I was improving every week was a lot better. And by the end of the class, I got an A. I felt so much more comfortable with not knowing things in CS or just not knowing things in general. And so after that course, I realized that I actually kind of liked it. How I eventually landed this job is a completely different story that I might tell another time. But in terms of skills, in terms of how I was able to improve afterwards, was that because I genuinely became interested in like programming, engineering, and I was okay with not knowing everything and I was just focusing on improving my skills. I actually improved a lot in the long run. I did a bunch of like code modules online, Advent of Code, which is this like, it's like an advent calendar but programming courses in December. What a nerd. I also did Code Academy and did a lot of programming projects. I did like a Taylor Swift React data viz. And yeah, I just like really threw myself at it. What differentiated me throwing myself at programming and all these interesting things later on was instead of earlier in life, this time I was genuinely guided by curiosity instead of results, and I focused on just improving instead of the results, because grades are not a perfect measure of like your talent and ability. What grades are is it's a measure of abilities at a given time. But the moment you stop trying is the moment when the implications of those grades become final. And I also want to say, you're not defined by your grades. You're not defined by failure. You're not defined by how much money you make. You are only defined by how you react to failure, how you react to making mistakes and feeling like you're not good enough. And this is something I sort of also realized along the way, which made me like persevere more in my like own journey in becoming an engineer, which was anything that's worth doing in life is hard. If it's easy, then everyone would do it. And a lot of times people want the results, but no one really wants to put in the work. So if you want to be someone who really does the thing they want to do, know that that journey is oftentimes really painful and you just got to be okay with feeling like you're not good enough. And this is why I think the growth mindset helps, because that allows you to not fixate on the state you're in, not the results you're in at the moment, but rather your improvements. But I also realized that if you really want something and you genuinely really want it, the fact that it's hard shouldn't deter you from actively pursuing it. I feel like I've grown so much from the sophomore year version of myself who cried as she was taking the CS midterm to actually becoming an engineer at Bloomberg. I think my technical interviews throughout all the phases at Bloomberg for engineering was 4 hours. The fact that I was able to do that, and if you had told my second year self who just cried while taking her second midterm because she could not understand the concept of classes and for loops, would think you're lying. Because sometimes I'm at work and I'm just like typing away at my little keyboard and I'm like, wait a minute, like I once cried because of this, but now I am like doing this every day. Growth happens. You can improve your skills and talent. If I could go from that and get to like where I am today, not saying obviously that like where I am at is like ideal or the best, but it's just a place where I feel good and like I'm pretty proud of, then you definitely can do it. How I transitioned from data analytics, my first role, to engineering is a different story that I will tell another time, but this is the story of how I failed my computer science class, asterisk, because it wasn't really a computer science class. It was supposed to be a computer science class for beginners, to, being an engineer now. I wish, like, as a society, we fixated less on results, whatever the metric may be, and instead just focus on our weekly growth, daily growth. I think that's so much more important. And, be kind to yourself. If the results are not ideal, it does not mean you're not worthy, that you're stupid, or that your life is over. It's rarely the case, even though it always feels like it when you're in a moment. If I was able to do it, so can you. Yeah, I hope that was helpful or interesting or inspiring to anyone. And let me know what you think. And I'll see you next time. I love you. Bye.